Fine. I just want to dive in. This is my friend David Jon Walker. David is well, he was my colleague at Middle Tennessee State University. That's how we met each other. But we also knew each other through AIGA, professional organizations. David is a designer. He's an educator. He's a student. He's an entrepreneur and an author. And he's a really good friend. And so I want to introduce you all to my friend, David Jon Walker. David.
All right. Thanks, Meena, for that warm introduction and welcome. This is your type 1 class. Is that right? All right. So, congratulations to you all for having a wonderful professor and for diving into graphic design. It's a awesome career, lots of opportunities, and you should have bright futures ahead. So, what I'm going to do is, where did this thing go? Oh, let's see, window. All right, can you guys see that? All right, so my name is David Jon Walker, and today we'll be talking about a series of starts and how they keep your life always interesting. So it's kind of cool, or really cool, that you guys are at the beginning of your design journeys. But I'm really here to tell you that the end for you all is nowhere in sight. Nowhere in sight. So, of course, I'm happy to be here. I'm from the South as well, so that's why I've got the y'all in there. I escaped the loose COVID guidelines of Tennessee to be able to be here with you all today. I heard a quote that said, if Tennessee was a country, it would be number 2 in COVID cases in the world. So I'm happy to say that I've never had the virus, but I'm actually broadcasting from New Haven, Connecticut, where I'm currently a student. So I'm also a father. These are my 3 kids: David, Dash, the little one, and Drew, my daughter. I'm a professor. I'm currently on a leave of absence from Austin Peay State University. I'm a practicing designer. This is actually Ted Carpenter, who you guys should look up as a designer and illustrator as well. I'm also a traveler, so anytime I have an opportunity to, I will go out to other parts of the world to see things, whether it's typography, design motifs, textures, patterns, just the way people interact, so I can gather information. So this is a picture of me and my older 2 kids in Chinatown in London, right before the pandemic shut down in 2020 in March of last year. I'm also an adventurer. This is some waterfall somewhere in Tennessee, and this is a ball pit and a bar in Medellin, Colombia, which was actually great. I'm also a dreamer. Anytime you have opportunities to take classes like outside of what you're doing, definitely do so, just to gain more knowledge and information. This is at the corner of Cooper Square, where Cooper Union University is. And I took a workshop there in 2019. And I'm currently a student at the Yale School of Art. So I not really left, but took a leave of absence from my teaching job to go back to school. So all of that to say that life is really big, not complicated, just big. There's plenty of facets to dig into. So I'll start first. As a graphic designer, I create functional visual artifacts for others to use. So I'll give a few examples of projects that I've worked on recently. Nina Turner for Congress. She ran for a congressional seat. I guess the race was August of this year. And so they asked me to develop a brand guideline system for her. She was formerly the campaign co-chair for Bernie Sanders' campaign. And if you kind of dig into the typography, what they did was take his word mark and kind of force it to be packaged in her way. So what they were doing, they actually used his color palette as well, that navy blue and the red. And what I said to them is, well, she doesn't need to be seen as an older white man. She needs to be seen as herself. But they had already been fundraising with this mark. So what I did, instead of like generating a brand new mark, we kept the mark similar and changed the colors out. Gave her a new color palette, gave her a brand system and a brand language to go from. You can see these gradients, the gradients here, which were meant to highlight the candidate themselves. If you look back at other campaign and political races for people of color, typically they have like the signage and all of that in color, and the people themselves are like normally set in grayscale, as if to not take into account who they are and their personalities. And so what I wanted to do is just highlight her as a person and make sure that the colors behind her wouldn't compete with her fancy glasses or the really bright, colorful, or pattern-filled clothing that she may wear. So you can see here typographically, I'm pairing like a bold, condensed sans serif with a kind of emotive italic, a thicker italic, so that when she does speak, like she's a shorter woman in stature, but she's like really loud and boisterous. And so I wanted to make sure that whenever she was quoted, it would resonate with her voice. So these are some sample pieces that were built out. I guess this purple set is for social media. There's an early vote card, a social media piece for Twitter here at the bottom, and then some t-shirts that I developed for them. So what's pretty cool is because I got into, because I had started school, I wasn't able to build all this stuff out, and they were partnering with these national brand firms in radio, TV, and social media in order to push this stuff out. So they used my brand package in order to create other materials so that everything was like set and on standard. All right, so this next one up is the National Museum of African American Music. All right, so typography 1 students. I did not, disclaimer, I did not design this logo. The kerning is terrible. And it's everywhere. Like here's a rendering of it, pre-construction of it on the building, and it still looks like this, which is horrifying to me. But nonetheless, I was hired by the museum to create some environmental graphics to go in one of their entrances or a corridor, this long hallway before you get to, I guess, the grand foyer and the exhibition space. So I wanted to take a typographic route and typographic treatment on this because once you get into the exhibition, you're inundated with imagery and colors and textures, and I didn't want it to be a repeat. I didn't want this corridor to be a repeat of what you would see actually in the exhibit. And so what I wanted to do is kind of wrap the viewer or the museum goer in the experience of how Black music or African American music came to be. And so this is the PDF setup that they gave me for me to lay this out. So what you see is like this is the left wall, the right wall, and then there's actually text on the floor that you walk along. So it's pretty big. I want to say this is maybe like 100 feet, if not, it may be more than that. I actually have not seen this thing in person. I saw it when they were installing it, and I only saw maybe like these first 3 panels. So I've not seen it. I've got pictures that have been sent to me. So these are the photos that you'll see. So this is the day that they were installing. And you can see it's like floor to ceiling. And I actually used, I guess, the typeface Bayard by Vocal Type Co. Trey Seals is a typographer out of New York City. And it was nice to have a typeface developed by African American for this particular project. So you can see how big the letters are on the floor. This is an entry wall. I wanted to play a game or give them a game to guess who this silhouette is of these Black entertainers. And then this is a picture from the middle, so you can see the text floor to ceiling all the way down the hallway. All right, so next is the Hattie Lou Theater, which is a regional theater in Memphis, Tennessee that puts on cultural plays by cultural playwrights. And so they asked me in December of 2020 to start producing show pieces for them. So the Holiday Cabaret was the first piece I worked on, and it was recorded based on COVID times. And then they actually asked me to do a virtual series, and so this is for social media. And then, happily, I was able to do the season 15 works for all these different shows. So it's actually nice to see how a show might progress throughout a season. And so I wanted to kind of bring in colors that resonated with the months, right? So falls and Decembers and summers and springs. All right. So this is, I guess I'll get into more of me now and kind of what I'm doing. So the pandemic time, which for all of us presented a new normal, for me meant a new normal of time and how I use time. And with that being said, it allowed me to embrace things differently. That meant I was no longer driving to and from work. It saved me 90 minutes a day out of my car. So I could now use my time in a different way, really to learn a little bit more about me, what I'm doing, and really just take a deep dive and a introspective look at what I'm doing and why I'm doing things. So with that, I had time to make changes. So from that time, I made some rules. Number one, I decided to start posting work online, and I decided to not use my website but Instagram because it was instant, it was quick, it was not heavy lifting, and it gave space for people to comment. Right? Like normally, if you post on a website, unless you're sending people there, you're not really going to get feedback. Number two, try a method of design that I've been a fan of but never attempted. So on that list was hand lettering, motion graphics or type in motion, as well as animation. So I ended up landing on letter form design and hand lettering. Number three, committing to daily fitness. Number four, saying yes to opportunities. So if some stranger reached out and said, hey, I've got something I think you should look into, more than likely I would say yes, or I would challenge myself to say yes if it was within reason. And then number five, submitting work to competitions. Something a bit more higher stakes than Instagram, but I could get my work looked at and folks could, I could be rejected or accepted, whatever. Nonetheless, it was different. So with all that being said, I began making work for myself. And it absolutely changed my perspective on how I was working and what I was working on and the why I was working. So of course, when you start doing things differently, your habits and your routines change. So again, like committing to daily fitness, I began running. In April of 2020 or last year was the first day. As of this morning, and this is a picture of this morning, day 591, I've run at least a mile a day for 591 days straight. So a friend of mine challenged me to do a mile a day challenge. And on day 31, my feet found my running shoes and I kept going. And so it's pretty cool. Like every day that I go out and do this, I break my own record, which I can celebrate. Like it's something small, but it's momentous to me. So I began posting work that same time, April 5th through 25th. These are things that I was posting to social media. So you can see all of these are like Photoshop based works. This School's Out is kind of my first foray into hand lettering. And what I did was I sketched it out in pencil and vectored it in Illustrator, and then I posted it online. And then the second one I sketched out in pencil as well, that's Ready to Roll, which was based on the Las Vegas mayor saying that they would be the test case for opening society back up. So all of these things are kind of are speaking to what was happening in the news and in the media at the time. All right, so from there, I began lettering and drawing my musings. And so I started a hand lettering challenge on Instagram with letterers Mary Kate McDevitt and Simone Wilder. If you don't know who they are, I'm sure your professor will tell you to look them up because they've got books out, hand lettering guides, and additional things. So what I did, I reached out to them and asked if they would participate with me. They said yes. And so I posted this piece, and they also posted my piece. And we had a good amount of participants to letter something for 15 days. So here are my 15 days worth of things that I missed. I missed hugs from my mom, of course, because I couldn't go to her house. I missed getting fresh haircuts, life before Zoom, going to class and seeing my students. I missed wearing bow ties to work. I missed having meetings over cigars or going out for Cinco de Mayo. At the time, I missed having truthful leaders. I missed driving my car. And then that last one, boarding big planes, typically, and like Professor Khalili, going abroad when school ends. So it was that opportunity missed. So I continued that practice, but what I found is I became productively neurotic. And so neurotic may have negative connotations in some ways, but in my mind, I became focused on hand lettering and really digging into typography and how and why it emotes and why is it important and what about this in design? Like, why are people so crazy about typography? And so I just really dived headfirst into this. Spoiler alert, I never had a typographic class in undergrad or graduate school. So from there, I decided to, let's see, something popped up on my screen. Here we go. All right, so yeah, I got focused on typography. So my process is this. I start out, I'm either reading something and I decide to find a quote that I'm going to write out. Or I hear something and I write out what I've heard, or I'm thinking about something and I write out whatever my thought is. And so this particular piece, I was reading Henry David Thoreau, and I was looking up some quotes from him and decided to letter this. Prejudices come in many forms. It's not just racial. It could be anything from food to clothing to hairstyles to where you choose restaurants, like anything. So I just thought this was really really timely. So I was giving up my prejudices from working on typography. So I thought this was great. So this is a time-lapse video of me lettering this piece. But nonetheless, most of my work thus far, or so far since I started all of this new stuff, has come by way of life observances, conversations, and news. So the day that George Floyd was killed, I lettered this piece, speaking about like my mom and how she feels and what I thought about that being an African American male in society. So from me just posting this online, and again, like I just started hand lettering last year, but at this point in May, I maybe had only been in it for maybe 20 some odd days. I got asked or invited to produce a poster for Fine Acts. And they're an international nonprofit out of Bulgaria, and they put these 24 protest posters out for the world to print out on their own and to march with. And so this is I don't know who this guy is, but they sent us pictures of people marching with the posters. And it was even picked up by BuzzFeed, and it was an article run, and a lot of people printed these things out. So I just continue producing works. And so these are some pieces that were based on happenings in the news. And so this tear gas for mothers, where mothers were protesting in Portland, and they were being tear gassed for staging a sit-in. And so all of these things are based on something that was happening at that time. From there, I got asked by the Biden design team to participate in a poster exhibition. And This piece here was created by Paula Scher. And there's like no way in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would be in an exhibition by her. And Paula Scher is another person that your professor will definitely tell you guys to look up for typography. Like she's like a type god in the minds and eyes of many designers. So more conversations based on the news and things that kind of jumped out, just hand lettering and just seeing how the combinations of letters can emote. So way to go, Joe. He secured the nomination. This one was for election night. This one was based on Trump claiming during the debate that he was the least racist person in the room, which was hilarious to me. And then no customer refund for election results. So conversations on life. This was a lettering series for Mental Health Awareness Month. And these were things that I thought would be helpful or encouraging to those that may be struggling with certain things. So I wanted to put out a few pieces based on that. Then I decided to try my hand at using technology to write letters. So I used my iPhone and the Nike Run Club app to draw letters in the street. And so fun fact or fun story, this lowercase e, I actually had to run it twice. So it almost took me a mile because I cut it short and had to run it again so that I could get the curve up. But nonetheless, I got to really just experiment and play around and see if it would work. This next thing on life, this is a series of a series honoring quotes by women of color for Women's History Month to inspire my daughter. So I did 31 of these. I'm only showing, I think, 6 in this presentation. But all of them, if you guys check out my Instagram site, are on there. And so what I did, I looked up these famous women of color. A lot of them are actresses, some of them are authors, some of them are playwrights, some of them are attorneys, scientists, and found a quote and decided to letter those quotes. And so they're all inspirational to me and hopefully to my 14-year-old daughter. And then lastly, I've decided to do a series, and just because I'm in school, I haven't been able to continue it. But I've done a series based on being in New England. So I quickly found out that if you say New York is New England, you might get in a fight, which is kind of funny to me. In New Haven, there are like pizza places everywhere, and there's a real debate on who has the best one. And if you go to order food or anything and you're typically Southern and taking your time, they'll like rush you. So you kind of got to be on it as you place orders. So from there, I encourage you guys to be true to your dreams. Some years ago, a friend of mine told me when I graduated undergrad, a lot of years ago, to be true to my dreams. And he suggested that I go to Yale all those years ago. And there was like no thought in my mind that I could possibly be here. But as of April of this year, I got accepted into the program. I just stepped out on a leap of faith. And because I was doing all of these things, like trying and trying again and trying again, I had enough courage to just like submitting work to competitions is just like submitting an application to a school. Like you're putting yourself in a place to be judged. And so I did just that, and I actually got accepted. So I'll actually talk about what I'm doing here at school. So I'm in 4 classes: Core Studio, Letter Form Design, where I'm working on a font; Moving Images, where we're working on film; and Critical Practice, which is a readings and discussions course. And so in that class, we don't produce anything. We're just reading things and talking about them so that it can help expand our thinking as far as design and art. So this is something a friend of mine, I was talking to asked me, um, why are you going to Yale? And I was like, I don't know. I just wanted to challenge myself. And this is what she said to me. And I was like, oh, I got to write that down. um, but it's the truth. Like, why go to school if you're going to be safe? Like, the whole point of going to school is to challenge yourself, to learn something new, learn something different, and to come out on this other side with more skills, more knowledge, and more things that you can use. So first things first, I'm actually I'm in letter form design with Tobias Farrah Jones, who's well known for creating the Gotham typeface uh, that was used for Obama's campaign. And so it's a revivalist letter form class. So basically you pick a font that you see out in the wild or that you've researched in the book, and you like redraw it in a way that is yours, right? Like a lot of the serif typefaces you can see, like subtle changes can make them yours. Or a sans serif, if there's a subtle change, then it can be your typeface. So what I did, I decided to look up some publications created by African Americans over the past century, and the Green Book stood out as one. And so the Green Book was published in 1936, ran until 1972, and none of the mastheads on this thing were the same. So a masthead is the title of a publication, like at the top. And so with this one, this is the single masthead that looked like it was hand drawn. And so I decided to make a font out of this. And so you can see, like, I went in and looked at it pretty closely to figure out if it was hand drawn or if it was something that was a font created by somebody else. As you see, it's on this curve, which means somebody had to draw this out based on the time that this thing came out. So it's a high contrast sans serif with flares and additional characteristics. So you can see some weird things like the connection of this diagonal to this crossbar is like super thin. Usually, like, this should have some correlation to the stems here, but it's not. So it's got, its own characteristics of how it correlates. And there are other things that kind of make it similar, that kind of tie the letters together. So from there, I actually, from those 9 characters, drew out, and these are my hand drawings, I actually drew out the whole 26 character set with a couple additional characters. So you can see 2 A's here, 2 D's. I drew these cues, but I actually made iterations of this that you'll see later. And then I decided to do a little bit more digging. Tobias gave me a couple typefaces that were made in that era, in the 30s and 40s. These are both German typefaces. And so they are similar, but they're nothing close to the same. This like has a really machine-like quality. Everything's like really, really tight. No real curvatures on the insides of the stem or no flares. This has flares, but as you can see between the two, they're really not close at all. It's just a high contrast sans serif. And so in letter form design, you start with control characters, H, O, D, N, and P, and from there you can develop everything else out. So from a H or a P, you can develop B's, R's, E's, U's, and so these are spacing strings, which help you get your kerning in line to make sure that once you start typing it out, it actually looks right. So you can get a rhythm, and you can also see like errors in the contrast or the width and the color of the typeface. So this is the whole set put together. There are things in here that I needed to change, and so I'm still working on this. This is a work in progress. As you can see, like the top 3 rows are pretty tight and condensed, and as you look at the bottom row, it's like really wide. So I'm working on these last 5 characters to condense them a bit so they feel more in line with the rest. And then from there, I developed the numbers as well. So here's a pangram that has all of the punctuations and numbers as well. A pangram is just a passage of text that includes all 27 characters, as well as the punctuation and numbers. And so you can see these two blocks stand in for brackets. I haven't done those yet, so those are coming pretty quickly. If you can look at this Q is very much different from the original Q that I had. So if we bounce back, you can see this one has a diagonal, whereas this one is a horizontal stem, which is great and feels better. So here's a poster that I made, or I'm in the process of making with it. This was the first iteration of it. This is the second one. This one feels a lot better, so I'll probably print it. And this is a quote from Victor Green, who is the publisher of the Green Book. There will be a day sometime in the near future when this guide will not have to be published, meaning he won't have to put out a book that helps African Americans safely navigate the interstates and travel around the United States. So from there, let's jump into the next class. This is from my Core Studio class, Cite versus Cite. So it's citation versus place. So the place that I decided to look at is Brookline Circle, which is a neighborhood that I live close to. And I actually run in this neighborhood, so it wasn't so difficult to kind of figure out why I was doing this project. So you can see like it is in a circle, and these are the streets. And what I realized is that none of the sidewalks connect. So this is a overlay of the sidewalks on the map. This is just the sidewalks, and in the space where there is not a sidewalk on either side of the street. These are the sidewalks with their distances compared, and then just the sidewalks themselves and the starts and stops of the sidewalks, and then a graph kind of the sidewalks removed and only seeing the starts and stops. So from there, I took pictures of those starts and stops and overlapped them, and they really look like bridges to nowhere. It's just really strange. But that's kind of what school is about, like just experimenting and trying things and investigating and seeing where it might lead you. So I did a video, but I don't know if we have time to watch it. It's like 2 minutes. What do you think? Yeah? All right, so I'll show it. All right, so at the end, where you had all of those diagrams, that was a test that I gave to my classmates to see if they could make out a neighborhood. And so they all did different connections of dots to make streets. So I brought that in. All right, so the next one is the citation. And so in that first piece where I had the place, I used all the words that kind of meant stop. So what I was on my way to school and I was listening to NPR and they were talking about the coup in Sudan that's been happening. And I don't know if it's over yet or if it's still going. But nonetheless, I decided to dig into the word coup. It was the one word out of all those that you kind of saw in the last project that could also mean stop, or some kind of halt or temporariness, that I didn't use in that project. So I decided to use coup as my citation. And so, of course, a coup is a blower stroke, and it's actually a French phrase, and I'm sure you guys, or maybe have heard the term coup d'etat, which is typically a government overthrow or the change in power. And there are other ones, coup de force, coup de foudre, or coup de glotte, coup de grace, which is typically like putting something out of its misery, coup de main, coup d'oeil, which is like a breathtaking view or something striking. And I decided to look at things like currently in our society that may be seen as coups, right? Everything as a coup is not negative, or everything, or there can be negative coups. No, most of the time, coups are seen as negative actions. So these are two that came to mind when I first thought about this project: January 6th attack on the Capitol, as well as our personal freedoms that many believe are unnecessary in Tennessee. Is wearing masks, as our governor recently banned mask mandates across the state, which is just totally insane to me. But nonetheless, I began to look at other forms of coups, right? Like you running into the ocean is like not natural. It's something that we like to do because it's refreshing and great, but it's different from something that we do on a daily basis. So it's like a coup to your lifestyle. Which is a good thing. For me, chocolate cake would be a coup to me working out and running or eating well, right? Um, and also, if you notice, like these are feathers, pigeon feathers, in fact, just because of the sound coup that those birds make. Last but not least, and not negative, is childbirth. It literally changes your life like in a split second, and it doesn't like go back. So from there, I was like, all right, this is cool. I don't think I want to produce, or not produce, I don't think I want to present these 3 posters as being my final thing, but I need to figure out something that will make sense and resonate for my cohorts and the people that I'm learning with and from. So I came to school, I was on a run, and a leaf fell from a tree, struck my face, hit my shoulder, hit the floor. I'm like, wow, that was a coup. Like it literally at that time, like it interrupted my run. I didn't think anything about it, but I was kind of bothered. Like, why would you do this? And coups are surprises. They're things that will overwhelm and take over. So on my way to school, I saw a bag of leaves that had been collected. They were waiting to be picked up, and I fortunately picked them up and brought them into school and dumped them all over the floor. I brought in 30 gallons of leaves. So I brought the outside inside, and here's a video of me pushing leaves around. So as a formality in creating a coup, I wanted to take over the space. I didn't ask anybody permission if I could bring these leaves in. I knew it was going to be weird, but I wanted them to experience a takeover. So I decided to letter coup on the floor. And so these are images of me sweeping leaves into shape. And you can, I think it was maybe 50 feet wide. Like so this atrium space used to be a former basketball court that they converted into our graduate studios. So all of our desks and stuff are upstairs, the classrooms are downstairs, and we have open space to meet, sit, congregate, whatever. So I took over that space. So I looked at this and I wasn't necessarily satisfied. So I decided to do a bit more. And so here are some close-ups of leaves. I did a bit more and I left for the evening and came back and saw some people like interacting with my piece. So I decided to take photos. And you guys are seeing some stuff that I've not posted to the world. And so this is like the final. And my classmates got a chance to experience it. Like they walked into the room, it overwhelmingly smelled like outdoors outside, fall leaves, like it took you into a different place. It smelled like fall. As the leaves were being moved around, you could just hear it. Like it really just overwhelmed everyone that was in the space. I was like, what's happening down there? And it's like, it's leaves. Like, why are they here? So less than 24 hours later, got an email from the fire inspector saying that my leaves have to go. They're concerned that the leaves will just spontaneously combust and start a fire in our building. So my coup lasted for approximately 21 hours, and that was it. So I had to clean up, and from the little dirt that was left, I created a small piece to commemorate my hard work. And so with that, your work will absolutely show you more of you than you ever will know. As long as you're looking at it and digging into it, the whys, the what you're doing, who's looking at it, who you're creating this stuff for. You'll absolutely have more ideas about who you really are and who you can be just by simply trying things out. I know I certainly do. And so this is a quote from that lettering series for the Women's History Month. Don't rest on your laurels, keep working, right? So if your grandmother tells you, oh man, that work you did in your type 1 class was amazing, just know it's not good enough. You can go further. You get your first job or your first management position, just know you've not met your top. So all I've done is just keep starting things so I can continue to go. But nonetheless, my last thoughts before we close out is that whatever you've done in the past has prepared you for today. So you're ready to take on whatever challenge that you think you might want to tackle. So thank you so much, Meena, for having me here today. Thank you, class, for hanging out with me for a little bit and giving me a little bit of your Monday after Thanksgiving. And my Instagram is here at David Jon Walker. And my email, if you have any questions, is david.walker@yale.edu. I appreciate you guys.